Hey, beautiful. Welcome to Dr. Sarah's Cafe. This is your weekly refill, and I am so excited for this very, very special video. It is the very first video I am recording and publishing on my new YouTube channel, Dr. Sarah's Cafe. So, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing and liking the video because you all are essentially part of the start or the launch of this new initiative. You are the first visitors, the first patrons and guests in Dr. Sarah's Cafe, and so I welcome you all. This weekly refill, I am looking at a few things. Okay, so I'm putting this up because this is the vibe. Dr. Sarah's Cafe, also the flavor of the week, which we do. If you're new, we do the flavor of the week, which tends to be the main content of these weekly refills. And because this is a new channel that I haven't been able to verify yet, I can't upload videos longer than 15 minutes. So I'm going to do the poetry and pastry segment in a separate video. So hopefully this will fall under the 15-minute mark and can get the whole thing to you in one video. But the flavor of the week this week has a lot to do with Venus moving into the sign of Taurus on April 29th, and also Mars moving into the sign of Aries on April 30th, so one day after each other. Now, Venus is the ruling planet of the sign of Taurus. So Venus is going home to the sign of Taurus where it rules. And then Mars is the ruling planet of Aries. So Mars is going into its home sign of Aries, right? So I love the fact that these two iconic personal planets, because they're really close to the Earth, are going to their home signs like back to back, right next to each other. Because what this means is that they will have an easier time expressing their energy in the cosmos, right? And we may have an easier time accessing those energies. And then thirdly, we also have Pluto going retrograde on May 2nd. So Pluto in astrology is still considered a planet. It's still a very powerful planet. In fact, Pluto rules are one of the key words or key ideas of Pluto is power. Hence the title of this video, if you paid attention. So I want to talk a little bit more about Venus and Taurus, Mars and Aries, and then Pluto retrograde. So Venus, as I've mentioned in other videos, is that sign of beauty, is a sign of romance, of emotions and feelings. It's considered to be a very feminine planet. You might have heard the phrase, women are from Venus, men are from Mars. And we know that there are whole shades and spectrums of gender expression and gender identity. But that is based on these archetypes, these historical, ancient, really archetypes of Venus being the feminine planet and Mars being a more masculine planet, meaning it directs its energy outward and it goes toward things, whereas Venus is considered feminine because it stands in place and sort of attracts things. And so that's what feminine and masculine mean in astrology. They have nothing to do with the sex of a person or their gender identity. It's more about how you show up in the world. And then Pluto, as I mentioned, is the ruler of Scorpio. And so that is definitely about the depths, the Pluto being, the power struggles or the underworld, like the deep, dark, buried things, the unconscious things, the uncovered things, the hidden things, right? But what I will say later on is that there's so much power in that. But I'm going to save that for a few minutes from now. So stay tuned. And the two tarot cards that presented themselves to me as part of this weekly refill were the King of Cups and the Queen of Wands. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. It wasn't, at first, it didn't seem aligned with what I was feeling with this Venus-Mars matchup. I was thinking of like yin and yang, or, the balance of masculine and feminine, which we all have inside of us. Every human being has masculine and feminine energy within them, and we can choose to express one more than the other, or express them in equal measure at various points throughout the day, throughout our lives, etc. So the King of Cups as an archetype in tarot is considered to be the most feminine king. And he is the king of cups, which is water and emotion. So we have this masculine archetype in tarot that is very in touch with their emotions, very emotionally intelligent, and feels really, really deeply. It is very much a Scorpio like card for that reason, because it can have very deep and intense emotions. And the Queen of Wands, being a feminine archetype who takes action, who's known as a go-getter. She's often seen as an entrepreneur, as someone who's a sort of a self-made success, right? And her work ethic, and she's ambitious and outgoing and charismatic, right? Things that in our society are considered masculine traits. And so I thought it was interesting. It kind of started to make sense when these two cards presented themselves. And I was like, oh, this is sort of looking at maybe through this cycle, through this transit of Venus and Mars, both being in their home signs at the same time, where we can tap into both of those masculine and feminine principles and energies and styles and modes of being in the world at any given moment, on any given day. We can step into one mode or step into the other mode, or a variety synthesis, a nice concoction of masculine and feminine energies and the entire spectrum in between, right? And so thinking again about our society and how it's still stigmatized, it's still frowned upon in many mainstream spaces for men to cry, or for men to be vulnerable, and for women to be ambitious in their careers, and for women to be sort of rugged and active, right? And so I know a lot of the people I associate with, especially online, have already gotten past these binaries, have already broken free from these social scripts that are imposed upon us. But I also know that there's a lot beyond just that echo chamber, right, of my online community and my in-person friends, where there are still a lot of people who feel trapped in those scripts, who feel trapped by those obligations and the expectations that society has put on them, simply because of, how they came out of their mother's womb and what they were, the sex they were assigned at birth, or um the not the social scripts, but the programming, right? So even those of us who know differently maybe still are conditioned to default to certain things, right? Maybe we default to certain expectations for people based on the gender we perceive them to be. And so I am excited for these transits happening at the same time, as a way for us to sort of be free. So sort of feel free from those very limited social boxes that people put us in. And then Pluto, again, being that planet of power and it going retrograde, is asking us to reconsider, to rethink certain moves that we might have made, also our own inner power. And so thinking about power to lord over someone else versus our authentic power within us, power over our own world, over our own personal universe, right? Instead of trying to control and exert power over the people around us or the environment around us, right? And actually, a lot of people, spiritual folks, science, psychologists, and psychiatrists, various types of experts have said that the people who try to control everyone else and everything else outside of them typically lack self-control, typically struggle the most to control from within and control their own selves. And so when we see those power grabs and those power plays, those are actually the people who are scrambling for power because they don't feel powerful just within themselves. And so they look for external forms of power. They look for external validations of power, whether it come in the form of money or abuse of someone else, or just all the ways that power has corrupted interpersonally, globally, nationally, institutionally, right? And so the flavor of the week this week, y'all, is androgyny. Okay. So androgyny, as defined by Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is the quality or state of being neither specifically feminine or masculine, the combination of feminine and masculine characteristics. And so it's interesting because I think of the flavor of the week as being a combination of things, as being a synthesis of things, right? That's how you get flavors. That's what lattes are, and espressos are. They combine things, whether it be coffee and water. And so this is really the combining of masculine and feminine energies, the flavor. And you can have different proportions. So maybe you want a certain amount of masculine expression and a little hint of feminine expression. And it doesn't have to be based on, again, your sex or the sex you were assigned at birth. But even beyond, I'm also not talking about this just in terms of physical appearance. And so I want to be clear about that this is not just about whether someone looks androgynous or has dresses in a very androgynous way, or if their face structure, is sort of not super masculine, but also not super feminine. I'm also talking about how we move through the world. And do we feel obligated to move through the world in a certain way just because we identify with a particular sex or gender, right? Or do we not feel free to explore the gamut of human energy, regardless of our gender identity, our gender expression? And so maybe allowing ourselves to say, when do I feel authentically called to tap into my Mars energy, my Martian energy? When do I feel authentically called to tap into my Venus or my Venusian energy, right? Mars, Aries, Venus, and Taurus. And Venus also rules the sign of Libra, by the way. So just some things to think about. Okay, I'm already at 11 minutes. This is not going fast enough. So the divinity message is the crow. And so this is where Pluto comes into play. So let me read the divinity message for the crow. Universal laws and truths are now being revealed. Use this energy to create your reality. The crow is highly associated with nighttime and the womb. Crow asks you to go into the darkness to tap into your manifesting ability. Start creating all you desire and enjoy the process. So Crow here reminds me of that Pluto energy, which I mentioned about. And I've said this before about the power of darkness and how so much is created in darkness. In the darkness of the earth, we see seeds getting nourished and starting to bloom and blossom. And that's where roots gather their nutrients. In the darkness of the womb, we literally create life, right? And the darkness of a what do you call the photo labs? The dark room? Is it called a dark room? I don't know. Where they develop photographs, right? And that in that darkness, the picture is able to develop, right? So there's so many examples of the power of darkness to create or to help us manifest and create. And so it's interesting that we got this crow card, especially with that Pluto retrograde. And I think this is a time to go within and to help us identify our authentic power, not trying to exert power over other people, not trying to exert power over the external world, over countries or a school system, but authentic power within. What's that inner source of power? The power to direct my own thoughts, the power to choose my own words wisely, the power to take actions and get up and do, or to sit down and rest when I know and understand I'm meant to do those things. And then, because I am running up on that 15-minute mark, I want to give you your affirmation, your to-go or your takeaway cup. And that is, I focus on my authentic power of joyful creation. And I think that so much of joy, things that are created from a place of joy, one, it's personally relevant to me. This YouTube channel, these videos are an example of that, creating from a place of joy. It's not the only source of creation, but I just ask us to explore and to test the waters of joyful creation in the week ahead. And remember that you do have the power to create. All right, with that, I hope you have a great week, and I hope to see you next time at Dr. Sarah's Cafe for your weekly refill. Bye.